And tonight, we are digging deeper into the suspect's background.
We've learned the alleged 27-year-old shooter has a prior criminal record. On Your Side's Ann Schindler joins us live with that part of this coverage tonight. Ann?
Well, Jeannie, Anthony, we told you earlier that this suspect had previous run-ins with law enforcement, but there's one case in particular that gives us a little snapshot of his life and his personal circumstances at the time. In 2011, he was charged with disorderly conduct and battery in Orlando. He pleaded no contest and was ordered to attend anger management classes. He was also ordered to pay the victim about $550. However, he was late in paying and faced a contempt of court charge. He wrote a letter to the judge apologizing profusely and pleading not to be held in contempt. He said he'd previously relied on his mom's car for court appearances, but it was not available and he had no transportation of his own. He added, quote, "I am by no means contemptible, as that would perpetuate a willfulness to disobey your orders." He added that his circumstances were, quote, "at most times out of my control." And he also noted that he graduated from college and earned his associate's degree since his last court appearance. Now, local court records show here in Duval County, he was also charged with reckless driving and marijuana possession, charges to which he did plead guilty at the Duval County Jail in downtown Jacksonville. Ann Schindler, First Coast News, On Your Side.